Hey, good morning. I'm having me a little bit of coffee here this morning before I get started. I got some music to get done and a bunch of things to do, but over my coffee, I'm reading over Facebook this morning, and there was an interesting post from Dan Graham. Those of you who are in the licensing business for film and TV music, you probably know who Dan Graham is. He's a big composer and has his own library, and he's based out of England. I would assume he's based out of England. I see him at the production music conferences, and I bought his book. I'm a friend of his on Facebook, and I don't know if you can actually follow him, or he added me as a friend because I bought his book and he knew it. He sent me the invitation, but go look him up. You can follow him. He's some great insight. He and as I've said before, there's he and many others who have great insight in this industry. Dan made an interesting post on something I've talked about before here, and I want to touch on it some more here. So apparently his library is getting some clashing and some pushback on copyright issues, and they're getting it from artists that are using samples and loops from Splice.com. Now remember, guys, and these construction kits and Splice.com and Sounds.com, it's not the percussion that's really a problem, more so than unless you just blatantly ripped off a Led Zeppelin drum track. It's the chord progressions and the melodies, the top line, blatant, obvious samples. Like if you sample somebody's words out of a movie, I mean, you can't do that stuff, man. You can't do it at all. Now, I've said once, I've said before, if you're going to use construction kits, packs, use Splice.com, you got to take these melodies and you got to make them your own. You can't just take it and throw it in there, because this is coming to a head in the music industry. It's coming to a head sooner than I thought. It was a big talk, as I said, I think on another video, it was a big talk at the production music conference about using Splice and construction kits and stuff and not making them your own. You've got to do it. You cannot do that. Just remember, if you're using it, 100, 200,000 other people are using this as well. And you cannot just throw that melody in there and do that. I've looked up a few people, but there's so many resources, I really don't have to post the links, of people who teach you how to use Serato Sample. There are DAWs, like I'm a Reason user, and Reason has a good slicer to where you can chop up loops and make them your own. You can put the loop or the sample in these players that Reason has, and you can create your own melodies with them. You can create your own stuff. These loops and progressions are designed to be a launch pad for you, not really something you can take and call it your own. And the problem is that I've seen there's so many people out there using these construction kits, and they're singing over them or rapping over them or whatever, or just putting them together and calling them their own, and it's not. And they may say it's royalty free, but you're still getting the copyright clash, just because if someone else used it and they released it before you, technically you got a copyright clash. And eventually that stuff's gonna have to be addressed in the industry, because with technology, this stuff is getting more and more prevalent. And apparently Dan's library's getting some pushback, and he said anyone using Splice.com loops, we're getting a few copyright clashes, revealing our writers to be using Splice loops exposed. One of our major sub-publishers removed one of our tracks from their servers last week because it infringed a major pop hit. On investigation of our track was released 6 months earlier than the pop hit, with both using a Splice loop exposed as the hooky intro. I think we might need to put a ban on exposed loops like this. It causes issues with tune recognition software and converts exclusive library publishers into non-exclusive library publishers. Basically it does, because everybody's using the same thing. It's basically the same thing. I think it's corner cutting, and it's undermining the hard work of writers and producers who sound as good as this without ready-made loops. And basically what he's saying is, guys, it's just as easy to write your own stuff. And honest to God, if you're new to composing, you're not good at music theory, learn it. It's okay. It's not that you don't have to get a degree in music to learn this. I've got music school behind me, and I've been playing for over 30 years or more. But I still have to go look up and go, okay, D minor scale, I'm missing a note. But all you got to do is you can go to YouTube and they'll tell you what each scale is in each key. If you understand what is in a major, what consists of a minor scale, you can laminate something and post it and read it. And if you know your keyboard, you can play it out. Better yet, there are DAWs like Reason has something called Scales and Chords. Listen, for time's sakes, I know my scales, but for time's sakes, I put scales and chords on, and I put the key I want to be in, take chords off, and all the white keys are in scale. And just follow your ear. Build an ear. It takes time, but you got to do it. I hate to say it, but this is going to filter out and make the difference between the guys that are musicians and the guys that are just starting out, want to be composers and don't want to learn music. I said it in some music. I said it in some videos in the past that you got to learn some music theory. You're going to have to learn music as well as you got to learn this business. And I'm telling you, each year, one thing about the Production Music Conference I learned is that I learn something new every year. And there's what's going on, what's on people's minds. This was big talk. Another thing I talked about in another video was composers just trying to broker people into libraries, taking half their writers and going in and a lot of these libraries, if they see guys constantly adding composers, they're going to cut them off, and they're going to say, hey, who's doing the work here? And we hired you as a composer. We're not going to keep adding songs that you're not, composing on. And the bad thing is it's going to start pushing these libraries and these clients to having composers send their sessions in and prove that they did the work. And we don't want that. That's a pain in the ass, and I don't really want to go through that. It just makes things harder for us. But guys, I'm telling you, with technology and recognition software, this is just getting more and more prevalent. I'm going to tell you, I spoke to a publisher of mine the other day. I've been working with this publisher about 10 years based out of New York. Huge publisher. You probably can read between the lines of who they are. And I always, for years, I asked them, I said, it just seems like your system's automated. When I put my music in, I guess the system gets everything done. And she goes, well, for the most part, it does. But we still have people sitting there when the music comes in. They have to make sure that it's tagged correctly, that it processes correctly. They can't listen to every piece of music at the moment. Sometimes they have to. The system apparently has recognition software in it, or it's connected to something. And based on what she told me, I would assume it's connected to maybe Shazam. Because if a track comes in that's flagged, they've got to go listen to it. She says they'll go listen to it, and depending on what it's telling you, they go verify it. And she said, Chris, they'll go to verify it, and it'll bring up, they do have recognition software, it'll bring up other artists that track is clashing with, and they have to listen to it, they have to listen to that music, and they have to catch to see if there's a loop in there or a sample or something that track infringes upon. If they don't hear anything, there's nothing there, they're fine, because the system isn't perfect, but it's there. And she basically said, just go to Shazam.com. If you're working with somebody and you're collaborating with them and you don't know what they're sending you, or if you're working with a loop or a sample that you've reworked, and she goes, whatever you do, don't just throw the loop that you're working in there, rework it, change the progression, make it your own. Or just write your own. But if you have any doubt about it, put that stem or that loop into Shazam. It's not perfect. It may come up, suggest an artist. Go scroll down, listen to the YouTube video, the music it tells you. If you don't hear anything in that, try about 6, 7, or 8 times. Keep doing it until if it brings up another. Because sometimes, like I say, it's not a perfect system. It'll do it. And I did this a little bit. I did this actually with some loops in some old construction kits I had in my loops and samples file. And I could just see artists coming up. And they could hear it in these tracks around the world. And they monitor that stuff. They monitor it, guys. And the PROs, it's getting frustrating, and it's getting to a point where they're just going to go, well, nobody's going to get paid. Just going to have to let it go. If they can't prove who actually owns that piece of music or that piece within that piece of music. So just, you got to be careful on this stuff. You gotta. There's a couple of guys I follow that use Reason like I do. I'm a Reason user, but it doesn't really matter what DAW you use. You can use whatever DAW you want. Most of you guys are Logic users, or your Cubase, or FL Studio, or Ableton. Reason just seems to work for me. It's worked for me, and it's some incredible tools in it. They've got some good stuff. I mean, I've mentioned a couple of things already, but these guys I follow are really good at using Serato, or slicing up samples, or taking loops and samples and putting them in their sample players and mapping them out. It'll auto map. And it really, if you learn the software and you can drop it in there and do it, it's going to make your life a lot easier. One guy I followed a while back ago, his name's Kevin Barnes. Kevin has a couple of videos on how to take a loop or a sample and put it into Reason sample player. I think it was their NNXT. Or actually, he put it in one of the percussion players, but it works just as well. It's the performance. He mapped out his keyboard and made that loop his own. Basically changed the progression and took the essence of that loop and created his own. He did a few good videos on that. He did one on Serato, I think was very good. Another guy is, he goes by Big Vic. B-I-G-G, next word Vic, V-I-C. Big Vic TV. Some of you guys probably know who he is. He's done some really good videos. He has a lot of videos on the how-tos on his YouTube here, and he's really good at that. But if you just go look on how to use samples and loops and make them your own in YouTube, I can't even count how many resources there are out there. These guys that are so good at doing this. And it's no secret. They'll show you what you want to know, you know. But guys, I can't stress that you gotta write your own music. It's that easy to do it. Just learn how to get a good basis with music. Understand chords, understand your keyboard notes. Consider that. Get an ear and listen. You're gonna know when they say have a resolve in a chord progression. You're gonna understand how it resolves. There's so many guys out there that learn that with their ear that they have no music training. But they can hear it and they can feel it. It's all from within here, man. That's all it is. You can't go through music, man, relying on construction packs and loops and Splice.com and trying to find people who can take that and doctor it up and run it into a library and piggyback onto that. That stuff's coming to a head in this industry. It's not that easy, and it can't be. And I'm just saying that, you know, it's just constructive. You gotta do it your own, man. You really do. I'm just gonna tell you, it's gonna come to a head in this industry. It's already started. When the more conflicts of copyright and a lot of this stuff that comes up, the harder it's gonna be for us composers who compose our music. So just take it for what it's worth. You know, go learn this stuff and go do it. Your life, I'm telling you right now, will be so much easier if you just do it yourself. I've had to learn things I didn't think I would be able to learn because, one, I'm not a drummer, and learning MIDI years ago just seemed like something that was so hard, but it wasn't that hard. I made it harder than it was. It's amazing when you really want to learn something, how well you'll learn it and how quick you'll learn it and how good you'll be at it. So that's my thoughts on that. Take it for what it's worth, but I'm telling you, your life will be much easier if you just learn to write your own music and use the tools at hand that are given to you. Be cool.